Right. Hello and welcome to all of you. My name is Madiha and I am the chair of the National Network for Parents and Carers in Higher Education, the co-chair, I must say. A quick thing, first of all, if you are not speaking today, can I please ask you to switch off your videos and your audios, just so that the experience is good for everybody who's on the call today. And once we get to Q&A, I will then ask you to switch back your videos and audios. Is that okay? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, so today's session is about how universities can best support staff members who have experienced pregnancy loss or baby loss. This is one of the first national events that we are doing today. This is going to be a 1 hour conversation, 1 hour discussion. We aim to finish by 3 o'clock this afternoon. And the idea to keep it on a Friday afternoon is so that you can go away and you can kind of think about the conversations we are going to have today, and then you don't have to work after this, essentially. So the event today, essentially there are 3 distinctive objectives. The first one is that the need to identify to create safe spaces for having these conversations, to talk about baby loss, to talk about pregnancy loss. Then the second objective is to share best practice by hearing from those colleagues who have gone through similar experiences and who have felt in some ways well supported by either their organizations or by any other support networks. And then the third objective today is to consider those HR policies which are in place already at some organizations, those policies that support staff members, whether that is about leave provision, whether that is about workload, whether that is about emotional support, etc. I have a fantastic panel of speakers today. I will not introduce them now. I will ask them to introduce themselves one by one as they are speaking. And then I think the other thing I wanted to mention is that this session is being recorded and I will be sharing it afterwards. If at any point you feel you need to take a break from the conversation or you need to step away, please, by all means, feel free to do so. Without further ado, this is it really. I think the first speaker that I have today is my wonderful colleague, Claire Campion. And I think I must say that when I first started thinking about this event, this discussion, Claire was very, very forthcoming, and she reached out with some very useful insights about her own experiences, about how she had connected with other people. And I think I owe a big thanks to Claire actually for coming forward and helping me think through this event in a very constructive way so that it could be useful for everybody who is here on the call today. So Claire, firstly, would you like to introduce yourself? And then the question I have for you is, what are your insights and your experiences of miscarriage or of baby loss, managing work, social relationships, continuing the parenthood journey as well? So Claire, over to you.
That was a bit of a big build-up, so thank you very much for that, Madiha. Hi everyone, I'm Claire Campion. I work at Manchester Met Uni and I co-chair our Working Parents and Carers Forum, a job I absolutely love alongside my main role as a project manager. I had a miscarriage in 2015. I'd only been married for 6 months when it happened. I'd just started a new job and we'd just moved house. Was really excited to be pregnant because I'd been told I might have some trouble getting pregnant. So it was a huge shock, a wonderful shock. And then I didn't feel very well. So I work near to a very, very good maternity hospital in Manchester. I went to the early pregnancy loss unit. And at first they were just like, you're okay, you know, the pains and things you're having is kind of normal at this stage. After a few weeks, I kind of just knew something wasn't right. So my husband took me again to the early pregnancy unit and I went in for a scan and they were doing the scan and then the room went very quiet and they went to get somebody else to come in, which is kind of when you know something's, you know, not right. So they came in and then they said, what you dread hearing, which is, I'm really sorry, there's no heartbeat. So we were devastated and you are still on the pregnancy ward, which is quite tough. I spoke through options with the nurses who were amazing. And you have 3 options when it's a miscarriage. What that means is you don't know anything's gone wrong. So your options are to just wait and see what happens naturally. you can take a tablet which brings on the miscarriage, or you can have a procedure. So I opted for the procedure, which kept getting delayed. So I had to wait about a week to go into hospital to have that done, which was pretty tough, being at home knowing that this little one no longer had a heartbeat. And this is where I would say it must be very, very difficult for partners, because my husband had to carry on going to work. So I was at home, but he had to keep going in every day, which was really difficult. The day I went in, he came with me. I could describe every minute of that day to you, and I couldn't tell you what I did yesterday, but I could give you every minute of that day. And it was a rubbish day, but he was with me, which is the most important thing. I had my procedure done. The staff were amazing, really lovely, looked after me. And then I went home with a sick note to say I'd just had a gynecological procedure, because we don't talk about it, which is another issue that needs addressing. So I went home, I stayed at home for 2 weeks. He had to go back to work again the next day, which I don't know how he did it. He was amazing, he did it. I then went back to work very silly after 2 weeks and decided I'd just crack on. And it wasn't until about 6 months later, when a friend I worked with announced she was pregnant, that I think it really hit me. And I ended up going through the work employee assist program and getting some counselling, which was really needed, because I was really struggling by that point. What's really difficult is I had some friends who were absolutely amazing and didn't try and do too much of the, how are you kind of thing. They were great, really supportive. And I'm just going to say that one of them is on this call, and I owe her a lot. So thank you, you know who you are. And then some people who I really expected to get it didn't get it. And the comments you get, like, oh, well, it wasn't meant to be. Maybe there was something wrong. It was nature's way. Well, at least you can get pregnant. I had all of those. And I know people mean well, but it's hard to hear those things. At the time, I didn't even think about policies or what I would do. I had a great line manager, so she was just very good at checking in with me and seeing how I was. So I didn't really think about not being in work or should there be a policy. It's only now that I'm thinking about this kind of thing for other staff and support for them. But we have a very good sickness policy, which is really good. But this isn't sickness, which is another thing I'm really keen on addressing. So while it's great to have a policy, you need the support, the right kind of support, and not just for you who is pregnant, but for your partner. And I think that's really important for workplaces as well, because we talk so much now about mental health and wellbeing, which is amazing, and I'm so glad to see it. But I really do think this is still quite taboo when it shouldn't be. We've got more celebrities talking out, more research happening with amazing charities like Tommy's and Manchester St Mary's Maternity Hospital, but we still could do more to support staff. So yes, a policy is great, but it's what goes with that. It was hard being around people at work who were pregnant, especially friends, but we got there and we had very open conversations. And it's amazing if you open up to somebody and tell them that you've experienced this loss, how many people then tell you. And I think one of the things I said to Madiha when we were talking was, it's a club you don't want to be in, but once you're in it, you can get some really amazing support. So I was amazed at the people that opened up to me and reached out, and the support I got from them, and that I was then able to give to them back, which helps you in a way. It's quite cathartic to be able to support other people. I became pregnant again at the end of 2016 with my little rainbow baby. And if you don't know what a rainbow baby is, it's a baby born after loss. I was terrified from the beginning. We paid for so many private scans throughout, and I probably knew at certain points I didn't need them, but we went anyway. And it was funny because things happened on certain days. So the first time we heard a heartbeat was Valentine's Day. And we've got the noise inside a little teddy, which just amazing. And the day you have your 20-week scan was my birthday. So, without sounding like, I don't know, some kind of hippie, it just all felt like fate and it felt right. And there were a few issues near the end with consultants and things. So I had a C-section. because I was terrified of something going wrong. But the hospital were very supportive. My husband was amazing. My friends were really great. Work were good. I got, you know, the maternity leave package we have is great. And she's here now, and she's 4, and she's crazy and mental and the best thing ever. But it doesn't, you know, it doesn't change what you've been through. It doesn't make you ever forget. I think the first Mother's Day was horrendously hard for both of us. And my husband bought me a little birthstone necklace of what the baby's birthstone would have been, which was lovely. And we still talk about them and what they would have been like. And, you know, I made some great contacts, including a lady called Kay, who now helps with Cradle. And I know Dawn's here from Cradle, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Kay did a radio documentary about miscarriage, and we became good friends through that. And it's people like that that then widen your circle of support, because the work Cradle do is amazing, the work the Miscarriage Association do, Tommy's. And I think if workplaces can connect up with these people and learn about the support that's out there, it's really amazing what you can actually find out. And although it's the worst experience you can have, you'd like to think you can give something back from that eventually. So you'll never forget. And, you know, I still get sad at times, and, you know, you've got Christmas coming up, so I should have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, but I've got my 4-year-old, and I would do anything for her. She's the best thing ever. And the reason I want to raise awareness is to help anybody else that may be going through this. And if anybody on this call is going through it, has gone through it, and wants to chat with somebody confidentially, please know that you can get in touch with me anytime, and I'm very happy to have a chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. That's really I'm so grateful that you have shared such a personal story with us, with so much courage, with so much bravery. Actually, I really appreciate your honesty, and I think you have raised some really important kind of factors as well, particularly when you talk about the support at work, and particularly the friends that were really supportive. I think you did say the friend is here today, so whoever that friend is, this is a big shout out to you. We need more people like you. And I think you also mentioned it was really hard to be around people who were pregnant at that time. Again, that's something really hard to deal with. And I think the other very important element that you have raised is the support for partners.
Yes.
Really, I think that's an area that somehow feels like it's always on the back burner. But I think hold on to that. We will come back to Q&A in some time. But once again, thank you, Claire. And with that, I think this very nicely leads me to my next speaker, who is Chris Whitfield from Miscarriages for Men. Chris, are you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Chris has to leave shortly after I pose the question to him. So please do feel free to reach out to Chris afterwards on LinkedIn. Chris has very kindly offered to take any questions afterwards, but today he'll have to leave. So Chris, very warm welcome to you. Firstly, I would ask you to please introduce yourself. And then secondly, my question to you is, how does miscarriage or baby loss, it affects men, and what are the implications for seeking support, particularly at work? So over to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having us here. So my story, very similar to what Claire was saying there, you know, except from a male perspective rather than the female perspective. Me and my wife had a miscarriage back in February. You know, there's never a nice time to have a miscarriage, but when you have it during a pandemic as well, it also adds a lot of pressure. I think the hardest thing for me was the fact that when we were going through our miscarriage, was the fact that my wife had to go into hospital by herself. I wasn't actually allowed to go into that room, which I found absolutely crazy, because our 12-week scan was in exactly the same room, and I was allowed to go to that. So it was absolutely bizarre for me in terms of why that was the reasoning, but you know, that was the COVID regulations. When we were going through it, my first and foremost was making sure my wife was all right. I wanted to know that you know, she was comfortable, she felt how she felt. I wanted her to open up and not bottle everything up, because you know, there's nothing worse when it comes to mental health and issues around that, of being in a dark place with your own thoughts. That was my first and foremost, and I kind of put my own feelings on the back burner with regards to what was going on. my story's kind of opposite to what Claire's was, whereby I have a 13-year-old daughter from a previous relationship, but this would have been mine and my wife's first child together. And my wife absolutely loves my daughter like her own. She's been there for 10 years of her 13 years that she's been alive. But like I say, this would have been our first. And, you know, all that excitement starts as soon as you see them, you know, them 2 blue lines on the pregnancy test. You know, you're wondering, who's it going to look like? Do we need a bigger house? Do we need a bigger car? You know, all these things come into it. And then, you know, all of a sudden you've got that snatched away from you, you know, 14 weeks later. And it is difficult. And, you know, I was very similar to Claire's husband, whereby I didn't really know what was going on, and I wanted some more answers. But in the meantime, I had to go back to work. But my workplace were fantastic. I went back to work for 2 days and realized that I was struggling. And I says to my boss, I says, look, I need some time off, just to gather my thoughts and find out what's going to be next and what's going on and where we go from here. And during that period, I probably came a little bit overbearing with my wife, whereby, you know, I was constantly asking her, "Are you all right? Do you want a cup of tea? Do you want this? Do you want that?" And she probably just wanted to tell me to go away and just leave her be and let her get on with what we were going through. But it was difficult because I felt powerless in terms of not being able to do anything. Fast forward about a week after we'd gone through the procedures and things. I really wanted to talk about it to people, but I didn't know really where to go. I found once my wife was in bed and she was asleep, then I was searching the internet trying to find answers. You know, what should I do next? What should I expect in the coming weeks and months ahead? Because I didn't know this. I'd never been through it before. I'd never done any research into it. You never think it's going to happen to you until it happens. And very quickly, I realized, as Claire said, you know, there's some fantastic charities out there, you know, Miscarriage Association, Tommy's. Up here in the Northeast, we've got 4 Lewis, who are brilliant at what they do. But a lot of it's very tailor-made towards women, guided towards women, which 100% it should be, because the woman's going through it physically, they're going through it mentally. But I was just looking for more peer-to-peer support more than anything, where I could speak to a group of guys who had maybe been through this, who had answers. You know, they weren't professionals, they weren't therapists or anything like that, but just, guys, what should I expect next? And that's what I was struggling to find. I couldn't find anything like that. So I took it upon myself and I said, right, okay, I want to create something that can help people. I wanted to make sure that people weren't going to be in the same scenario where I was in, you know, sitting in this room wondering what the hell's next. And that was where Miscarriage for Men was launched. I took myself off into the spare room. I told my wife I was working on a project, didn't tell her what it was, created the website. And then just before I was due to launch it, I discussed it all with my wife, showed her what I was doing, told her the reasons why I was doing it. And she was fully supportive of it. Fast forward to where we are now, you know, 8-9 months down the line. The original post that I put on LinkedIn's had over 3.8 million hits. We've had over 500,000 visitors to the website. We've helped probably around about 10,000 people so far, putting them in touch with charities who they need to speak with. And a lot of guys have just came to the website just to thank us for doing what we're doing right now, because these guys have had miscarriages back in the 70s and the 80s and said they would have loved to have something like this back then to help them. And only now they're actually talking about it. But I think Claire hit the nail on the head with what she said with regards to actually support out there for guys, because, you know, we know what guys are like. You know, we do bottle our feelings up. We do want to hide our feelings. We don't want to show that we show this symbol of being weak. You know, and it's not about that. You know, everybody grieves in their own different ways. My way of grief with dealing with my grief was to build a website and, you know, to help to help people move forward, because what I want to let guys know is that it is all right to be upset. You know, it's all right to show your emotions. You don't have to bottle everything up, and, you know, you can talk to your partners and your friends about it. And as Claire rightly said, you know, there is a massive taboo around miscarriage. Miscarriage is stillbirth. There's a lot of taboo attached to that. And rightly, you know, there's a lot of toxic masculinity around that as well, and toxic positivity that goes with it, whereby people will say things that they think are the right things to say, but they're actual not. You know, well, at least you're young enough to try again. You know, it obviously wasn't meant to be. You know, and all this kind of stuff that filters out with that, and that's not what it's about. You know, it should be about you know, supporting your friends in this time of need, supporting your colleagues in this time of need. You know, and all it has to be is simple. You know, it just has to be, a lot of people won't know what to say, so they'll come out with this toxic positivity and say, no, well, you can try again, because they don't know what it is that they need to say. All they need to say is, you know, I'm sorry for your loss. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. I might not know what to say, but I'm willing to listen. You can just talk to me. And that will open up corridors and allow people to be able to reach out to them and speak about it. And I think that's where I was at. And, you know, as Claire says, when people don't talk about it and bottle it up, it's amazing when you do actually talk about it, how many people have actually gone through the same scenario but not spoken about it, because they've also thought the same kind of thing. Oh, I shouldn't really talk about this. It's not something that, you know, you would go down the pub and talk to your friends about. But in actual fact, it should be, you know, and it should be something that we can talk about, because, you know, the more help we can get and the more we can spread the word about this, the better it'll be for everybody. And one of the things that I constantly come across in the podcasts and radio talkings that I've done so far is the whole 12-week myth. You know, do you tell people before you're 12 weeks pregnant? For us, we did. We went to our 9-week scan. We went to a 9-week scan where we seen the baby, we seen the heartbeat, we seen everything was looking good. And we decided at that point to tell our friends and our close family. And that actually helped us, because that allowed me to have the conversation when we ultimately went through our miscarriage. And if I hadn't have spoken to people about that, people would have turned around and went, "Oh, I didn't even know you were pregnant," you know. And it's one of them where, you know, there's no right or wrong here, you know. But if you've got that support network there, which I did, you know, my best friends are great. I can ring them at 2 o'clock in the morning and, you know, tell them that I've got an issue, and, you know, they'll offer to come round, or they'll say, drive round to mine, or anything like that. But not everybody's got that. And that's where Miscarriage for Men want to come in, is that we will very soon be a 24-hour operational platform, whereby we will have somebody online constantly, whereby if someone wants to get in touch with us and just have a chat, they can do. You know, and even if it's just about approaching that boundary, whereby they start the conversation, you know, did you see the football results this weekend, and then build on it from there, and then ultimately tell us the reasons why they've came to us. That's what we want to build. We want to build that support network. And if it is a case that they don't want to just speak to us from a peer-to-peer network, and they actually want some guidance in terms of counselling or therapy or whatever it is along them lines, we will act as the middleman, and we will signpost them to Miscarriage Association, Tommy's, For Lewis, all these guys. We're slowly building followers across the social media platforms. It's great in one sense, the fact that people obviously want to talk about it, but in the other sense, it's horrible, because I'd rather nobody had to come and visit us. But it's just to get the word out there and let people know that we are there if people want to come to us and have a chat.
Thank you, Chris. That's really helpful. I think, like you were saying, everyone grieves in their own ways, and you have grieved in your own way, and your way of grief was providing and creating this platform. I think it's very raw, it's very honest. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris. I know you have to go, but I just have one question for you before you go. In fact, if you have time for two, I'll ask two, but if you have time for one.
No, that's right.
The first question is that you also mentioned at the beginning that you had a 13-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. How does that come in when you process the grief, when there's another child in the equation? How do you navigate that? And then the second question is, gosh, I've forgotten the second question. Yes, the second question is that if you had one thing to suggest to organizations who could better support staff members, particularly men who are going through baby loss, what would be that one tangible action that organizations, universities, they could put in place? So take as long as you need to. Over to you.
It's a difficult one when you have to explain to a child what you're going through. I mean, my daughter, you know, she was 12 years old when we had to explain what was what. But at the time, it was the right thing to do, and I explained it, and I probably went in a little bit more depth than what I actually should have done. But then when I sat down and thought about it, and I actually brought this up on a podcast I was on a couple of weeks ago, is, you know, we learn about sex education in school. My daughter's 13 years old now. She's learned about sex education and stuff, but we never learn about the awful side of stuff that can happen as well. And maybe that is something that should be introduced into the curriculum, because, you know, I would have been in a much better place when I would have gone through sex education if I had learned about miscarriages and stuff like that, to further support my family in terms of what I needed to do next. But, you know, we learn about, oh, this is how babies are made, and this is how we move forward from that. But we never hear about the fallout of what can actually happen. And in the grand scheme of things, when you've got 1 in 4 miscarriages 1 in 4 pregnancies that end in miscarriage, maybe it is something that we need to look at and say, yes, this is the lovely side of it, baby's born, etc., but please note things do go wrong. And I explained to my daughter, and I told her what was wrong, and she went up and she gave my wife a cuddle, and she was like, she didn't know what to say, but she's a child, she's 13 years old. And I just says to her, I says, if you've got any questions, come and speak to us. And then I heard her on her mobile phone to her friend talking about what we just talked about and what had happened. And that was nice for me, because it showed me that she was processing what was happening, rather than actually just going all quiet and going back into her room or anything like that as well. So that was that side of things, and she took it really well. And the fact that she was willing to talk about it was great for me, because that further proves that we do need this. And this, as for the second question, in terms of employers, not just for men, but for females as well, one of the big things that we need to look at is policies around miscarriage and stillbirths. There's a lot of companies out there who, as Claire rightly said, will put down, they offer a gynecological region, or I done a talking with the MOD a couple of weeks back, and one of the ladies who was on there, she was out in Cyprus and had a miscarriage while she was out on patrol in Cyprus, and they put it down as having an upset stomach. This kind of thing, this needs to change, because they're taking away that element of the fact that they did still have a baby and putting it down as an upset stomach, and that's completely wrong. And one of the big things that comes out with that is the fact that there should be a policy in order to have people to have mandatory leave when it comes to the workplace. Because for me, for my staff, if one of my staff came to me and said, I need some time off, my wife's had a miscarriage, I'd say, absolutely, go. Let me know when you'll be back. Right now, in that moment in time, that is their primary focus. Their primary focus is their partner, their children, everybody around them. The big thing that comes with it is, it costs me a hell of a lot less to pay them to be off with their family sorting things out than it would do if they're causing an industrial accident in my workplace. And that's the big thing for me.
No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I think you very rightly said that, it's better to give them that time off rather than force them to sit in an office space or wherever and work without being effective at all. Very useful insights, Chris. Thank you so much. And I can already see suggestions coming up in the chat window about a good start would be at least to mention the resource Miscarriage for Men on the websites for different universities. So once again, thank you very much for being here today. No, Chris, if you don't mind, before you go, if you could pop in your LinkedIn sort of like ID in the chat window, because I know you have to go, but if people would like to get in touch with you, they could do so through LinkedIn. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely no problem.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Have a lovely afternoon.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you so much, Chris. And I think this, again, talking about leave provision, talking about resources for universities, that nicely leads us to the next part of our conversation today. We have Lauren Ree from UCL, Head of Employment and Policy. Lauren and I have been working at UCL for almost 12 years now. So I had the pleasure of speaking with Lauren quite a few times in the past, and Lauren very kindly agreed to be here today. My question to you, Lauren, are you there? I'm sure you're there. There we go. Yes. So first of all, if you would please like to introduce yourself. And then secondly, the second part of my question is, what policies, what strategies are in place at UCL already to support staff members who have experienced baby loss? So over to you, Lauren, take it away. And you are on mute, Lauren.
Right, there we go. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Lauren Ray, Head of Employment Policy at UCL. And I have done a little slideshow, that way I can share it with you afterwards. And it's entitled Best Practice for Supporting Staff Through Pregnancy Loss. And I've got some links on there also to our policies, which you can refer to afterwards. So if you can just bear with me while I sort out the text. So Madiha, I now can't see the part for some reason where it says to share my screen.
If you don't mind, I can share it. I have it here with me. Unless you made any changes.
Okay, no, I found it. Yes, sorry, it's, okay, here we go.
Great, we can see it.
You can, great. So that's just my details. So I think best practice is perhaps, you know, considering holding a briefing session for line managers, so that you can brief them in advance of anyone having a loss, so that they're readily prepared for that occasion. So I think when doing briefing managers, remember that there are different types of pregnancy loss, and it's quite important really for line managers to understand that, so they understand the terminology, but also they can understand the different circumstances around each type of loss. So I've just put up here on the screen here a little outline of some of the different types of loss. So your miscarriage, which is loss of a pregnancy during the first 24 weeks, an ectopic pregnancy, when the baby develops outside the uterus, usually in the fallopian tube, and that can be very, very serious for a mother. It could result in death if not treated properly, and that results in the loss of the pregnancy as well. It might be a termination, very difficult decision for anyone to have a termination. And it could be because of medical reasons, because it will put the mother's health at risk. It could be because the fetus is severely disabled. It could be for psychological reasons. It could be for social reasons, economic reasons. And again, there's a lot of stigma around that. And your member of staff might tell you that it's a miscarriage rather than a termination. Then there's the stillbirth, which is the death of a baby after 24 weeks. And that could occur that they die during the birth or they die within the womb. And then we have neonatal death, which we're not really covering in this session, but that's when the baby is born alive and then may die within the first 28 days of life. So as part of your briefing with line managers, it's also really important to outline all the different types of effects that a parent can go through, depending on the type of miscarriage or baby loss that it is, you know, whether it's very early in the pregnancy, very late in the pregnancy, whether it's the first time someone's had a miscarriage or whether this is part of a pattern of multiple miscarriages. The parents can go through all sorts of different types of trauma. And as we've heard from Chris, let's not forget the fathers or the non-birth parent. It could be a female partner, that they really need to be supported too. And so here's just a list of some of the common effects that we've heard some of that today from people's testimonies. So grief, anxiety, shock, fear, depression, guilt, trauma. It could result in a relationship breakdown. Some couples find that they can't deal with the loss. And for the mother, there can also be physical pain and gynecological issues afterwards. So it's important that managers know how to support people when this happens. So I think it's really important that the maternity policy details what the entitlements are if someone has a miscarriage or a stillbirth, and how absence should be recorded, so that managers have a clear reference to go to, and that even those who are pregnant will, I'm sure, read the maternity policy as soon as they find out they're pregnant. And it's useful for them, even if they don't take that in at the time. You know, hopefully if something does go wrong, they will remember that the details are in the maternity policy, should they need to refer to it. And it also helps HR managers as well to have something clearly laid out in the maternity policy. And you can also duplicate in the paternity policy as well for fathers and partners, so that they're also aware if something does go wrong, what is available to them. So it's really important that staff do feel supported to take the appropriate leave, that you have a community that is open and is open and honest about these sorts of things, and that it isn't hushed up and pretended that it was an upset stomach. People should be able to talk freely about these issues, and staff should know in advance that if something goes wrong, that their employer will support them. So it's important that the line manager is very supportive and clear to the member of staff that they are to take the appropriate leave that is required. Make sure that their workload is distributed amongst the rest of the team so that the individual can go off on leave without worrying about work or feeling guilty. And make sure that line managers don't expect them back for an appropriate time commensurate with the type of loss and appropriate for that individual, because of course everyone reacts to events like this in a different way. It's important that the manager discusses the level of confidentiality that the individual wants for the rest of the team. Are they happy for the rest of the team to be told that they've had a miscarriage and they will be off for some length of time? Or do they want privacy around that? And, perhaps they want the team to be told something else or something that's not so direct. If you've got an employee assistance program, make sure that the individual is given the details of that so that they can get counselling. Make sure that you check in regularly with a member of staff and repeat the types of support that are available. So while you may have verbally told them about the employee assistance program, if they're in shock that they've just told you about the miscarriage, they're probably not going to remember those details. So it's definitely worth following up later with an email, a text, or a phone call, and reiterating the types of support that is available. And you could refer them to this website. Now, this website is really useful because it brings together all of the baby loss charities, and there are so many of them. Oh goodness. Hold on, let me turn my phone off. There are so many different charities, all doing, slightly different work. And I will be interested to find out from Chris if he's going to get his Menopause for Men registered with that umbrella organisation, because it's a great central resource that people can go to and have a look at which charity might support their particular circumstances. And UCL also has a Parents and Carers Together network, and I know that a lot of other universities do. And those networks can also provide those who have lost with peer support. Perhaps other people have been through something similar, and they can offer support to each other. So giving the appropriate time off, it can be a little bit nuanced and perhaps a little bit complicated, which is why it's important that all of this is laid out in your maternity and paternity policy, because different circumstances may end up with different types of time off that you take. So if the mother has a miscarriage or termination up to 24 weeks, they will take sickness absence. But it's important that it is recorded as pregnancy-related sickness absence, not an upset stomach. And pregnancy-related sickness is protected under statute. And so they shouldn't be penalised for taking that time off. So in other words, you shouldn't be counting that absence towards triggers, which might then end up managing their sickness absence. Some employers may offer compassionate leave for this kind of circumstance, which is equally valid because, again, that wouldn't be counted under sickness absence. And as long as the end result is the same, that they get time off and it's recorded and they get some sort of pay for that time off. It might be statutory sickness absence if that is all you offer, or it may be on full pay if that is what you offer. For the partner, Again, they may need to take sickness absence to recover from the psychological effects themselves of the loss. They may need to take time off for dependents if they need to care for the mother. And again, some employers may offer or call it compassionate leave. With a stillbirth after 24 weeks of pregnancy, the mother is still entitled to their full maternity leave and maternity pay that they would ordinarily have got. Plus, they are also entitled to 2 weeks statutory parental bereavement leave and pay. At UCL, we've enhanced that and we offer staff 4 weeks leave for parental bereavement on full pay. And for the partner, similarly, they are still entitled to paternity leave and pay. It is statutory is 2 weeks on statutory paternity pay. UCL offers 4 weeks on full pay for paternity leave. Partners, again, they may need to take time off for dependents to care for the mother if needed. UCL offers 5 days on full pay for time off for dependents, but again, it might be classed as compassionate leave. And again, the father or partner is entitled to the parental bereavement leave as well on top of the paternity leave. So again, that's UCL offers 4 weeks on full pay for that. Returning to work, it's really important that the mother's return to work and the partner or father as well is handled really sensitively. So have a return to work discussion before they return to work. Discuss reasonable adjustments if there have been any long-term complications. So if they've been off for a year and there have been any underlying gynecological problems, if it's lasted for 12 months or likely to last for 12 months or more, it may be considered a disability. So you might want to cover any reasonable adjustments. Discuss with them what they want you to say to the team about your return. Some people will not want to talk about it in work and they would want the team not to mention it to them. Others may be very open about it and might want to share their experience. Consider a phased return back to work if it's going to be traumatic for them coming back. Refer to occupational health if needed, again, if there are any long-term complications or issues that may need dealing with. And check in with them often, make sure they're doing okay. And be aware that it may be a very difficult time for them when others announce their pregnancy, or indeed, as we've heard earlier, that if they get pregnant themselves in the future, they are bound to be more affected and more sensitive to the pregnancy. And so support may be needed around that. I've just put here a list of our policies, so I'll circulate this round afterwards. So if you want to see our policies and how we've worded things, you may find that helpful. So the main policies here are the maternity policy, our bereavement leave policy, carers leave, that's time off for dependents, we call it carers leave, the paternity partner policy, and there's some information also about our Parents and Carers Together network. Okay, so I'll stop sharing that. I can work out how to do it. I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. Very, very useful insights. And I think I'm already making a list of some ideas that are coming up. Very, very useful indeed. And I think in some ways, there are many best practice initiatives that are in place at UCL. Particularly, I think I made note about the frequent check-ins. We somehow underestimate the value of face-to-face conversation. And I think that is absolutely important to ensure that the channels of communication are kept open between the person and the line manager, or whether that is another person who they are speaking to in confidence. So thank you for that, Lauren. Hold on to these, please, because I'm sure there will be some questions about it in the Q&A session. We are 15 minutes away from our finish time. I would like to invite my last speaker for today, Dawn Brown. Dawn is the director of Cradle Charity. I think Claire has referred to Cradle as well, and I think Chris also mentioned the charity. So Dawn, warm welcome to you. Could you just perhaps, oops, what have I done? There we go, yeah. Could you please introduce yourself also? And then the part B of the question is, could you just give us a very brief overview of the support services offered by Cradle, and what can universities learn from those services? What lessons are to be learned? Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, my name's Dawn Brown, and I'm one of the directors in Cradle and one of the trustees. So Cradle is a registered charity, and we support early pregnancy loss up to 24 weeks. We were only registered in August of 2020, so we are quite new, but we have grown really quickly. We have services in 41 trusts around the UK, including 2 that are in Northern Ireland, which are fairly new. We support healthcare professionals, we support the patients, we provide projects. One of those is the Comfort Bag Project, which our ambassadors pull together comfort bags, which get donated to the NHS for them to actually then pass on to women when they are admitted into hospital in an emergency situation. So the comfort bag is full of toiletries, and it has a dear friend letter in there which signposts the women directly to us. So part of the signposting process, we have peer support, and peer support at the moment is hosted on Facebook. We have about 1,500 people that are on that platform that get actively involved, and it's moderated by our trustees. But we are looking to move that off of Facebook, mainly because of all the reasons that have been coming up lately with Facebook crashing, and we don't want that obviously happening with our peer support. So we'll be hosting that on an external server. We have other peer support, especially for Greater Manchester. We were able to secure funding, and we devised a peer support called Connected, and Connected is for the Greater Manchester region, and it is a Zoom call that happens once a week, and we have 8 people that can take part in it with 2 trained facilitators, and anybody who's in the Greater Manchester area can go online and they can join that session. They're not the same day every week, they move, so it's a Monday one week, then a Tuesday, then a Wednesday, and to a Thursday, then it moves back to a Monday. That's been going since August, and we've had some really great feedback from that, and partners are welcome as well. Cradle understand that not everyone's journey is the same through pregnancy loss, and we also understand there are so many different types of pregnancy loss, but a lot of the time it can get lumped into just one thing. And you know, there are molar pregnancies, there's PUL, ectopic, miscarriage. There's a lot of different pregnancy losses, and I think sometimes people can feel as if they're sort of put into one category or another depending on the time. But we're aware that there are so many different areas that it can affect. We support everybody that's affected with partners, family members, surrogates. A lot of the time a surrogate is actually forgotten in the process. You have intended parents as well. So if a surrogate actually goes through a pregnancy loss, the intended parents actually can be kept very much out of the process in hospitals, we've found, and afterwards. So we make sure that we are working with other organisations to support intended parents and surrogates. And we also recognise within Cradle that not everybody who goes through a pregnancy loss may be grieving and may be classing themselves as bereaved. A lot of the time we do refer to bereaved parents and intended parents, but you will also come across the case that we've noticed within our research that there are situations which are abuse possibly. There'll be people that are in abusive relationships. Maybe they didn't actually intend to become pregnant, and they will be struggling sometimes with the terms that are used. So we are very bold, I think, within Cradle to be looking at the background research behind the language that's used, the language that's used within hospitals, the language that's used on social media, that's used on discussions, and we try to be extremely inclusive and understanding. of the different situations that people can go through. So we're a small team. We are 7 trustees. We have 43 ambassadors around the country who do a lot of the social media work for us, who go into the hospitals when they can and deliver the comfort bags and work on projects like plant therapy and work it out with Cradle. We know that no matter what your experiences and what people are going through, everyone's journey is different and individual. And we don't want anyone to feel like they're on their own, which is why we are there for everybody. We listen, we ask to people that come through on our peer support. We find out what challenges that they've encountered, be it at work, be it within their family, be it within their friendship circles. And we try and improve things across all sectors, including healthcare professionals. We work very closely with all our healthcare professionals in the hospitals and the trusts, and we make sure we listen to what they need. We support them with their well-being and their mental health. I'm a mental health first aider, and I'm also a coach and an NLP practitioner, and I look after the well-being side with Cradle. So we do a lot of well-being work with our NHS healthcare professionals as well. And then we have our education side of Cradles. We have a consultancy side, and that education side, we hold masterclasses. So we're looking at universities, and we looking at the students that are going through that pathway, whether they'll be working in these EPAU units or A&E or midwifery, and we will work with universities to really drill down on the things that are missed sometimes in the textbooks, the things that are just spoken about in their training, and we will try and be there to help them understand sometimes what they might encounter in units. We've had a case of student nurses going onto units and not realising that a loss at 16 weeks would mean that they would be delivering a baby, and the student nurses, for instance, have not realised that they would actually be handing a baby to the parent, and it's been quite distressing, and they've had to then deal with the fallout of that afterwards. So we try and cover those in masterclasses. We hold study days when we're linked to different education authorities, and like I say, we look after the well-being. We're also aware, though, with everybody that's delivering any training within universities especially, there may be lecturers that are going through their own loss in their past that may, or infertility issues, and they may find it really hard to actually teach what's in the syllabus and what's in the textbooks, and they may not talk about their losses. So we understand that, and we try and support staff with that as well. And I know one of the questions you wanted to ask was about what lessons can be learned in higher education, and I think a lot of people have touched on this today, but it's to have open conversations and don't shy away from loss, don't shy away from talking about it. It's something that's been really drummed into us through our mental health first aider training. You just have to open those conversations up and not be scared to talk about loss and grief and what people are going through. And everybody has their own way of handling their journey as well, and to be sensitive to that. To make sure within your team, that was covered off, I know previously, to have these discussions. If you have a member that has gone off with a pregnancy loss, a baby loss, speak to them first of all and see whether they would like you to be that intermediary to talk to the team, to explain to them what's gone on, or as somebody said previously, to actually tell them something different, but make them aware as to, this person will be off for a few weeks or a few months. I mean, in my case, my history, 9 years ago, I had a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. It was misdiagnosed in A&E for 18 hours. You can actually die within 4 hours of a rupture. So I was extremely lucky to be taken down to trauma surgery. I had trauma surgery, a full blood transfusion. I did lose my left tube, but my recovery period was extremely long. I was off work for about 3 months. I didn't physically recover for about 6 months. And the mental health side of things for myself, it took 18 months for PTSD to come out with what I'd experienced. And I was extremely lucky that the company I worked for had a fantastic medical scheme and EAP, and I was able to access counselling as soon as I needed it, which I did go through. And luckily I turned pain to purpose coming to work with Cradle. We have counselling in certain areas where we have funding. So we have counselling for individuals or for couples. And we are just looking to extend that funding, and we're trying to apply for different bids at the moment. So I would just say also just actively listen to your staff members when they come to you with a loss. Hold that space for them, actively listen, ask them what they need and how you can help them. And a lot of the times they will come out with that. Cradle also look, which Lauren covered as well, we look at policies, we look with corporates, we look at educational institutes, looking at how the policy is created, what they are missing out on. Like you said, we are quite bold and inclusive. So a lot of times, intended parents are missed off of policies and surrogates are missed off of policies. And we just want to make sure that everybody's included and that we can give a really well-rounded policy creation to people. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I think that's really helpful to learn more about the work that Cradle is doing. And I think it's doing brilliant work, actually. I didn't even realize that there is so many elements and so many kind of, areas in which you work. And I think you also mentioned something really important, which I never thought about before, that staff members who are teaching and who might have gone through this experience, how difficult it must be for them to actually teach at that point. Thank you very much, Dawn. Right, now is the time when I ask all my panelists to please do turn back on your videos and we can all join in. We are literally 3 minutes away from finish. I think a big, massive thank you to everybody for joining in today. It is the time now, maybe 1 or 2 questions. I don't want to keep anyone from, doing the next bit on their schedule. So perhaps maybe we can just take a couple of questions or a couple of comments, and then we can, we can perhaps go on with our day. I will be sharing a recording soon. Any comments from anyone? Any questions? Anything anyone would like to share? Diana, I see you here. Anyone else? Lauren, yes, please. You have your hand up.
Madiha, I think this has been such an amazing session today. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but it has just been fantastic. And I think we need to go on a roadshow around as many universities as possible. I want this same roadshow to be done now at UCL with you same speakers, because it has just been absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Lauren, thank you so much. And I think this is exactly the point for starting these conversations, because in my 8 years of chairing the Parents Network at UCL, not once I gave thought to this such an important side of our lives. So I think you're absolutely right. First of all, to begin with, we need more awareness. So the first objective, to create safe spaces to talk about this. It's sort of, this is what we are going to share best practice with each other, like Claire shared hers. And then to talk about how it affects men, Chris shared his experience, and to see what support is available out there, like Dawn has just spoken. Thank you, Lauren. That is action point number 1, to go on the roadshow around the country. Diana, you have any insights you'd like to share with us? Anything you'd like to say?
Just to thank you all. I mean, I found that so fascinating. Obviously, I'm from working families, so we work supporting parents and carers, across the UK. And you talked about so many things, really heartfelt comments, and actually some of the comments as well, just in the chat, like Michelle mentioned something about. She was told by her manager that there was no support offered because, she fell before 24 weeks. And we come up against that when we're helping our employees that we work with. They talk about experiences their staff have had. We work with sort of EDI, HR teams. And, that's a common theme. It's, okay, statutory, we're not obligated by, statutory regulations to do X, Y, Z. But then actually what we've found over the years is we work with some very progressive employers that are doing amazing work. Some of the things that you've covered, but, buddying, peer-to-peer support, training for managers, really that awareness with managers about how to navigate these difficult situations when somebody comes to them in this situation. But also what was very important, I thought, was the phase back you talked about, Lauren, because we very much embrace, flexible working. And that isn't always just a period of phase back, but actually reviewing that, that individual or whoever might need consistent kind of attention to kind of how they're, they shape their working patterns. So I think really thank you so much everyone for talking, because that was so fascinating for me.
Thank you, Dana. Again, I think you're absolutely right. There are so many helpful comments in the chat as well. I think Crystal's mentioned associated topics like fertility support or prenatal mental health. And I think there's a long list, really. I have been really, really grateful to all the people who have been here today to give their inputs through the chat window. I'm really grateful to the panel members for joining today. I would love to take more questions and comments. I do feel I promised you an end by 3 o'clock, so I should stick to my promise probably. And again, I think this is the beginning of a conversation. This is only tip of the iceberg that we have sort of touched upon today. We will continue to have these conversations and these awareness raising sessions. Please do spread the word around. I will circulate a recording of this conversation later on, and I think as the bare minimum to start off with, if we can all pledge that we will make available these resources for support on our websites. And I think another important comment was about making them available on the well-being pages, not only on parents and families pages, because naturally somebody who has experienced baby loss might not go to the parents and family pages. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to everybody who has been here today. Have a lovely afternoon. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you at a similar session next time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.